dissolving frozen beings. There have been many disembodied beings that I have come across and interacted with. One peculiar situation was with a Native American being. Native Americans are always portrayed as very proud, fit, and strong people. They were good warriors, had great pride in their culture, and were very straight. He would fight a battle with you today and tomorrow if you so much as called him a brother. He would be willing to give his life for you. That is how they were. For them, killing and dying in battle was an honor. They never knew that someone could come and usurp their land or take it away. They just did not understand. They saw the earth as a life force that sustained them. This is one of the few cultures in the world that did not look up when you said God. They looked to the earth as the force that created and nurtured them. If you know American history, just south of Tennessee, there is this trail called the Trail of Tears. Because in the mid 19th century, whole tribal nations were forcibly moved westwards to free up land for European settlers. So entire tribes walked. Their weapons were taken away because with weapons they could be dangerous. Without weapons they could not hunt for food, so they starved and walked. The old and feeble died. The Native American way was such that if they buried their dead somewhere, they had to take care of that place. Now, because they were traveling, they cannot bury their dead, so they carried their dead. The bodies rotted and fell apart, and they cried and they walked on. By the time they reached their destinations, nearly 70% of them were dead. So this is called the Trail of Tears. These were very earthy people. They have a certain earth sense. For them, their religion, their occult, their practices were all about the earth. They have a very deep connection with the earth. When these people suffer, they leave puddles of suffering all over the place, and it stays. A few years ago, when I happened to be walking in certain part of the Appalachian Mountains in Tennessee, I saw a man standing still, frozen in a certain position of despair and shame. I saw that he was just standing there in the full regalia of the ancient native tribes, completely frozen in time. Whenever I see someone in extreme movement or when they are intensely still, I put myself into it, because both of these situations are possibilities for me to do something. People in extreme movement, they are a possibility. People who are utterly still, they too are possibility. I cannot keep myself away from these two kinds of people. The in-between, medium movement does not mean much. So then I saw that for almost 200 to 300 years, this man was standing there frozen. I saw that the situation behind this was that this person had the responsibility and the privilege of protecting his elder brother, who was a certain kind of a leader or chief of the community. He was like a right hand man, protecting him in every way. Now, in that tradition, a brother need not necessarily mean that he was born from the same father or mother. You can take up brothers in the same way that you take up friends. This man held this elder brother in great esteem, and he deemed it a great privilege to walk by his side and protect him. A situation happened where he had set up a meeting for the chief with some military people, the white men. Somehow this chief was deceived and killed by the white men. This man felt so responsible that he just stood there in absolute despair, failure, distress, and shame. Such extreme emotions were within him that he had been just standing there for a few centuries. When I saw him, he was still standing right there, not in a physical body, obviously. The earth fell back to the earth, but the rest of him stood there just as he had been in that moment. So I thought it was time he moved on. Too much time in shame, too much time in defeat is not good. I helped him to move on from that situation. This is a poem I wrote just after that incident, America. The brooding darkness of these woods fed upon the native blood. In the twisted tangle of the fallen wood, the spirit of the fallen Indian stood. Brothers, your identity a mistake. Those who oceans crushed did make. The greed for gold and land laid waste the spirit of wisdom and grace. The children of those who by murder did take are taintless of their forefathers' mistake. But those who lived fed upon the milk of courage and pride stand as spirits of defeat and shame. Oh, the murdered and the murderers, embrace me. Let me set your spirits to rest. Probably that moment, the encounter with this being, is the most painful moment of my life. And it was then that I started noticing how there is such a deep sense of pain in many parts of that region, which will play out in human lives whether we are conscious of it or not. If a rock can suffer, a human being for sure will not be spared. Untold suffering will simply happen without any reason. When there are puddles of pain like this imprinted in the earth on which you live upon, you will never know what true well-being is in your life. You may build a big house, you may carry a shotgun and shoot whatever you like, but you will not know a moment of rest in your life when the earth that you walk upon is in such a state. If you don't know how to take care of the material which makes you, you will never know even one moment of well-being in your life. There was another situation that lingered for a long time. During the Dhanalinga consecration, there was a disembodied woman who used to frequent the roof of my house. Before the consecration, we have done many things with such beings and dissolved them. But this particular one hung around for more than a year and a half, maybe two. After the consecration, my body was in a certain state of instability and I did not want to deal with her. Such beings have no sense of judgment, they just have a longing. It is like someone who is in a deep state of desire has no judgment about life. Someone wants to drink, someone wants to rape, that is all. It is not because they are good or bad that they do it. They have no judgment about life. They only have longings. According to their karma, they have certain vasanas or tendencies and they simply go by that. There are other kinds of creatures which have gone totally out of shape. They have not been able to retain their human form. They have become subtle. But this was a woman who had retained a heightened sense of femininity in her form. No woman in the world would be like that. She was extremely beautiful and in a much larger proportion than normal. She also created an illusion of wearing beautiful dresses and presenting herself well. Her vasana was femininity, which was always in counter to masculinity. So if you tried to meddle with her, naturally she would come as a woman. She would not know any other way to approach. This could have led to so many unnecessary situations, but she would not do anything on her own. If I had invited her into the shrine in the house to dissolve her, in a moment it would have been over. However, as I have mentioned earlier, those days my body was in a state of fragility and instability after the consecration, so I did not want to risk it with her. In the night, She would be walking in the inner corridor of my house, her anklets making the sound jing 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 jing. It was not just me who heard her, whoever stayed in the house would hear her walking throughout the night. If you opened the door and came into the corridor, she would be sitting up on the roof with a forlorn look on her face. She sat up there for almost 2 years. She would not enter the shrine. She did not dare to, but she kept walking and waiting. I did not do anything with her. I just left her there. There was a bit of concern because my daughter was 8 years old then, and even she heard the anklet sounds. These kinds of disembodied beings can harm female children, so I had to take precautionary measures for the girls' room. However, the woman never showed any signs of interest or violence at any time, just forlornness. I did not try to ward her off because she was so forlorn and longing, seeking something. Once my body became more stable, I decided to dissolve her. Since her body had become so subtle, it was much easier to pull her pins than that of embodied human beings. I wanted her to live in a very conducive atmosphere and did not want her to get into a state of fear or disturbance. So I just brought her inside and asked her to bow down to the shrine. When she did, I just pulled the plug and dissolved her. It was finished. She is no more. Dissolving people in their disembodied state is a much easier thing to do if the necessary conditions are in place. For example, if all the women on the planet decided that for the next 1 year there shall be no conception on the planet, then all those beings whose time has matured and who need a womb would be floating around in a limbo. Their unconscious desire would be to find a womb, but there would be none available. This would be an ideal situation for me to crack them before they find one more cycle. When they have just died and are floating around, you cannot fix them because they are too unconscious. But when their prarabdha karma is compelling them to find a womb and none of the women are cooperating, it is an ideal situation for dissolving them. There are so many young women with us who have not gotten pregnant and they will not get pregnant because they have chosen to live a life of intense involvement that their biological urges have become insignificant. But if all the women on the planet decide not to get pregnant for the next 1 year, that would mean there would be at least 130 million beings waiting for a womb. It is easy to do this with those who have bodies also, but until the final moment comes, people will not give their personality. It once happened. Matilda and Agatha were sisters. For 37 years, they had not spoken with each other because of a feud. Then one day, Matilda became seriously ill. So she wrote a note to her sister. It started, Agatha, not dear Agatha, because she was still angry. Now that I am dying, I forgive you for all the nasty things you have done to me, Matilda. Then she thought for some time and added, P.S. In case I recover, everything stands the way it is right now. When death knocks on your door, your life will be focused and naturally you turn inward. Because the outward is of no use anymore. When people are approaching death, their personality drops and the pretensions that they carry on with the external will become unimportant.